Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Season 6 of the FRS. We are here in this Xbox Division 1 race at the halfway point of the season, Round 5, Silverstone, Great Britain. It's got a very, very long pit lane. You'll lose over 27 seconds, closer to 30, so it will be really important in the strategy. And of course, a long track, 5.8 kilometers around, 18 turns, just 2 DRS zones around this high-speed circuit that really tests your precision in your car placements. Now, Silverstone is one of only 3 tracks to host an FRS season finale. It joins Interlagos and the Red Bull Ring, getting an impromptu finale last season. Now, we'll take a look at the action zones, the first of them being at the first end of the first DRS straight. Brooklands, this left-hander that leads straight into Luffield, is your first best overtaking opportunity. But of course, the battle will continue with that switchback left and right. And then at the end of the next DRS zone, while still a high-speed corner, Stowe, this right-hander that leads into the final chicane, is your next best overtaking opportunity. The 3 compound tires, soft, mediums, and hards, with the mediums being 0.7 a lap slower and the hards being 1.3 seconds slower per lap. A 26-lap race on the cards today. The hards will go about 18, mediums 14. The softs only go about 8 laps into this race, so not going to be used for much more than a qualifying tire. As we get ready to head into the qualifying session, we'll take a quick look at the championship table. LC Fighter at the top of the table still. Loribo moving up to P2 with their race win last time out in Austria. Cryptic moves down because of that. Queasy is in 4th, and we've jumped up 5 spots from P10 to P5 with that strong finish, just ahead of Habsfan, Nick Spen, MJ Povey, Nemesis, and Issei. Now let's get out on track as we get ready to start our first qualifying lap of the session. Full throttle through that final corner, getting the car planted and rotated. Now, turn 1, flat out right-hander. Just need to try and find the inside curbing. Nailed it down there. Sweeping through this left turn. Now, finding the braking zone for turn 3, your first real braking zone. And then through the loop here. Switches back slowly, a little wide of the apex there, and just trying to get the throttle down is so tricky. Flat through this right-hander, full throttle there. Now, the first DRS zone wide open as we head down into Brooklands. Just beyond the 50-meter board, you're going to brake, turn in, take this very late apex, and then it switches back for this right-hander of left field. You V off the corner just a little bit, come away from the apex, make it 2 apexes to try and straight line the exit a little more, as you have a decent chunk of straight line ahead of you. Next, heading up into Cops, flip down a gear, turn it in the previous generation cars in like the 2019, 2020, 2021s. You just about get through there flat. Now, Maggots, Beckett's, and Chapel. Tricky section, just kind of lifting, downshifting at each corner, then full throttle as early as you can. Take some of that grass on the inside, actually, as it's an unloaded tire. You can kind of lean on the rights. DRS is now open as you head down over 200 miles an hour into Stowe. So hard on the brakes, turn it in. Get the power down over the crest now for just a couple of corners left to go. Hard on the brakes into the final chicane here. Pitch it in, get it rotated to the right. Try and open up the exit a little bit more. Get the power down as early as possible. The back end gets a little nervous, and our first effort is going to be a 28.0. So not a stellar lap time to kick off the day, but at least a banker is in the books. We'll jump ahead now. 9 minutes left in the session as we are about to start our second flying lap. Now out of the final corner, we'll go one more time. We've actually got our teammate just a couple of corners ahead, having already finished their flying lap. We're about even Stevens through the first couple of corners, only about 200ths of a second down. A little bit more tentative on the brakes in, a little better on the exit, so we trade it off, and we are just pretty much even. So a little bit of an improvement through the first couple of corners, and now as we head down to Brooklands, we're going to catch a little bit of slipstream off of Queasy, so you'll see that. But looking up ahead, that 50-meter board is totally missing, so I've completely botched the entry. You can see I've given up almost 0.2 of a second fully in that one corner because my brake reference was completely gone. We carry on through the lap, though. We have set a personal best in the first sector, but only by a couple hundredths. We've given it all up on the braking zone, and now we've run a little bit wide through Cops here and lost a couple more tenths, or really about 1.5 tenths, and now that's going to cost us pace all the way through Maggots, Beckett's, and Chapel, this right-hander right here. And while we do get a little bit better exit, we're down to a similar margin, about 1.5 tenths worse than our previous best, as LC goes provisionally fastest on the 27.2 at the moment. We're a little wide on the exit of Stowe this time, but we managed to carry speed, so we've made a little bit of ground up now into the final chicane to see if we can have a mighty final section, but we were a little slow on the entry, and a big snap of oversteer as we're trying to get on the power, and that's going to cost us a huge amount of time, and we are unable to improve on that second flying lap. So not in the best mental state on that one. My braking point was missing, and it messed me up the whole rest of the lap. My brain was not in the right place. So we go for one final attempt here to set a flying lap. We're provisionally 7th at the moment, looking to try and move our way up. Pitch it into turn 1, just a little clip of the apex, tiny bit wide, but pretty much even. Now hard on the brakes. We're going to try and get to the inside. We get on the sausage curb, and that unsettles the car, and around we go. And that is that lap completely done and dusted. We just kind of have to wait for everybody to drive past us. And it was not a great qualifying session, setting just kind of a modest banker lap and then not improving on the next 2 runs. But Cryptic P1, LC Fighter comes on front row. Our teammate Queasy 3rd, Hapster and Nick is 4th, Laribo 5th, Issa 6th, Ben Wolf 7th, Pepmeister 8th, myself 9th. And that one kid is 10th. Stanier, Chuck SRQ, Josh Beatbox, Heinous Slime, NFC Vickers. Round out kind of the rest of the grid here. Now we'll get on to the grid. We're starting on the hard compound tires as we wait for the 5 red lights. Very slow formation lap made it very difficult to warm up the hard tires. So it's a tentative release off the line. We get a decent run. We kind of boxed in the car alongside. We're lifting out of turn 1 just to be nice and cautious as there's some elbows rubbing in the background. Early on the brakes, a couple lockups from Issa and Hapster and Nick. We're trying to go wide as Josh is all over the back of us, and coming through turn 4, it looks like a little bit of a loss of traction, but then Josh Beatbox just presses through our car until we ghost. So we had a tiny moment of oversteer. We probably could have handled it, but Josh put his nose in and just kind of spun us the rest of the way around. So lap 1, we've already dropped now down to P16, so not a great start to the day. Just like Austria, we've got some serious work to do to catch back up. Luckily, we weren't facing completely the wrong direction, as Hapsfan Nick is slow, as there's been contact between those two, and it's actually going to tell us that we've illegally overtaken Hapsfan Nick. I didn't think we should have gotten that. He was just still kind of recovering, but, you know, maybe a little slow. I end up not handing this position back, just opting to take the 5-second penalty. In hindsight, I probably could have lifted, but at the time I was thinking of maybe protesting it. It would have only cost me about another second to lift, but I also would have had to try and re-overtake Nick. So we've taken this 5-second penalty. We have to serve it in our mandatory pit stop in this race. So at this point, I'm just kind of hoping for no safety cars, because if there is a safety car that comes out after I've served the penalty, it cannot be removed. Vickers is into the pit lane to serve that drive-through, as there is a big gaggle of cars just ahead of us. We're already starting to catch up to Josh, who was the one who spun us. So we're getting there. Hapster and Nick still on the back of us, inside the 1-second margin, but DRS not yet enabled in this one. And we were expecting a fully dry race all the way around today, so no provisions for rain particularly necessary in this one. That one kid seems to be having some connection issues as they're going to that red X. And we are catching up to the Red Bull of Pepmeister, and we are fighting with Red Bull primarily for second in the Constructors' Championship. And that 50-meter board is missing once again. Luckily, at the end of qualifying, I started looking to the left-hand 50-meter board that was well off the racing line. So I could at least get an idea of where to brake, so I'm a little better on it. But I did have to kind of make that adjustment on the fly, and of course it was gone again in the race. So I would assume probably similar culprits driving off track and taking that. A little wide on the exit of cops there. Lucky to not get a track limits warning for that one, but now into Maggots and Beckett's, and you can see carrying a good amount of speed, a little bit deep through there, so that's going to cost us some time and momentum to have Sven Nick behind, who is in the rear view mirror pretty aggressively. We're going to burn a lot of battery to try and hold him at bay. He's in the slipstream of us. We're just kind of going to take to the normal racing line, and on the brakes, we're a little bit wide on the exit, though. And that is going to cost us a little bit of time. We're going to have to defend to the inside, leave the space for Nick on the outside. And he is going to be there, so we have to go wide of the apex for the second part of the chicane. But we are able to maintain our track position. Double snap of oversteer that we had to catch, getting on the throttle out of the final corner. Easier this year to spin out of that final corner than it was in previous years, but we just about keep the rear wheels underneath us, and we're starting to catch back up to the points paying positions. Pepmeister and that one kid just ahead. Pace-wise, I think I should have probably been on. I was mentally thinking probably maybe a top 5. But with the spin and after the on the first lap, it quickly turned into an I just need to try and score points. So around through Cops we go. We're closing up on the back of Pepmeister. And we are going to be in the DRS, but he's going to have DRS on that one kid ahead of him. So it's turning into a little bit of a DRS train. Same with Habs fan Nick behind us. So rear wing's going to flip open for both of us. We're just going to settle in, see if they attack that one kid ahead of us. And he does go to the inside of the McLaren on the brakes into Stowe. That one kid a little bit wide through the entry there. We've got a decent run. Have a little look on the power. We're going to get down the outside a little bit later on the brakes because we're going to have to take our turn in much later. And then around the outside we go. He gets a pretty good launch off the penultimate corner. We leave him space on the apex, but we've just about got that job done. And now we are just about on the DRS border with Pepmeister. We need to close up a little bit of time, which we do have a good run through turns 1 and 2. So we are able to make up that roughly 1/10 of a second that we needed. And now it's about 0.8. So we are well within the DRS range of Pepmeister ahead. You can see we're going to have that DRS available to us, that green line just above our telemetry. And we are burning quite a bit of battery. It's not a quick recharging track. You only regain about 7 to 9% per lap. So it does take quite a while to get that battery charged back up. But we're 4 laps into this 26-lap race, and we have managed to get ourselves back to the points-paying positions. However, we are carrying that 5-second time penalty, which could be an issue later on, depending on how much the field spreads out. Pepmeister a little bit wide on the exit of Cops there. He did lose quite a bit of momentum, so it's not one I'm particularly concerned about. The track limits are a little bit buggy on the exit of Cops, and very slow through the corners is Josh Beatbox and Pepmeister, but Pepmeister's going to have the DRS off of Josh ahead, who's already got 6 seconds worth of track limits penalties. And we are closing up on Pepmeister, who's on a better set of tires, the mediums compared to our hards, but Josh is just going to crowd Pepmeister right off the track. We're just going to have to lift off and coast into the corner relatively early. Lorebo is out of the session, though, has crashed on the exit of the final corner, and that is going to be a full safety car deployed in this one. So there they are, the destroyed Red Bull on the inside. And unfortunately for us, starting on the hard compound tire, it's not an ideal time for us to pit. So we do rejoin the race 1 and 2 with our teammate. We both started on the hards. So us staying out, not making the tire change. It was a perfect spot for medium tire runners that if they did come in, if they did start on mediums, they could come in and do the rest of the race on the hard compound from the safety car. So we're just waiting for our teammate to set it off, and there goes the throttle. He's gotten away quite well. We've given a little bit of a buffer, and we're going to burn a lot of battery. He's going to weave a little bit to try and get some heat in the tires. We're decently warmed up as well, and we're going to try and run away from Habs fan Nick behind us. Cryptic had started on the mediums, made a pit stop. Spen is out of the session, has crashed out of the final corner. We're very wide on the exit of turn 4 there, but we're just about getting it settled in. Now we're going to try and get away from the Alfa Romeo of Habs fan Nick behind. We're going to try and stick with our teammate as long as possible. You can see he qualified 3rd on the grid, and we were 9th, so he's got a little bit more innate pace than us, but I think even if we can burn some battery over these first couple of laps, stay within a second of them, we might be able to start leaching a little bit of DRS and really just try and edge away from Habs fan Nick, who's going to have to start fighting with Cryptic relatively soon. We're jumping ahead now, lap 11, as Chuck SRQ is out of this session, and that is going to be a safety car, and there's the Delta bug, where it immediately goes to 5 seconds, and basically everybody has to park it on track. But lap 11 here, we're just about in range where we can get a set of mediums to the end. So we are going to box this lap, is the plan. We're going to try and see what our teammate does. Delta is up to 3 seconds, so we're going to try and close that up and not be too far off the Delta. But there was a desync issue with the lobby, so we had to call a red flag, and that results in a 25% restart. based on the grid of the last formed lap. So 25% distance race, myself and Queasy, 2 Mercedes on the front row. However, a big problem came up right off the bat that I realized getting off the line was you have to reload the lobby, obviously load up onto the grid, and normally you set your setup and stuff all in qualifying, and then it's just tires and fuel. I had enough time to set my tire and fuel strategy for this shorter 25% distance race, but somebody readied up instantly and started the countdown timer right away, and I was unable to load my custom car setup. Now, I gained about 1.2 to 1.4 seconds a lap by having the right setup in. So, you can see I've already lost 1.1 seconds to my teammate ahead. Habs fan Nick is bearing down the back of us. And while we did start 1 and 2, we are going to be in a world of trouble with cars like Habs fan Nick that we were racing pretty even Stevens with, because they managed to get their setup in. And you can see just the straight line speed advantage that he's got. I'm burning all of my ERS, and there's just no way that I could hold him off through Stowe. I've got a good run. I have to kind of dodge off as our teammate spins. Queasy's gone around on the exit of Stowe. A little bit of a lockup from Nick ahead, but Nick has taken over the race lead. And Cryptic now bearing down on the back of us. Of course, going to a 25% distance race, you still have to satisfy the 2-tire compound rule. However, it's pretty much an easy soft medium or medium soft. Cryptic on the mediums goes down the inside. As we head to turn 3, we're going to go ahead and just leave space. Without having the setup valid and set, really hard to get through some of these slower corners, and especially the straight line speed problem. You can see just how much ground he's gaining. I'm still trying to check to see what's going on with the lobby. I've gone a little bit deep into Brooklyn's there. But at this point, we just kind of have to soldier on. And no further red flags, so we jumped ahead. Just a little bit later in the lap, Cryptic has gone around on the inside, so we've taken P2 back. But Nick, you can see, in just about 2 laps, has gone 3.3 seconds ahead, and now Pepmeister is starting to make some inroads. Salmon Mania, we've been able to hold at bay about 3 seconds or so. So I'm not worried about our pace compared to them, and we're just kind of ticking down the laps. If there can be some mistakes behind us, we might just be able to sneak a podium even with an unideal setup. I honestly think that if I had gotten my setup loaded, we're going to jump ahead to lap 5 now. And you can just see the speed that Cryptic is able to carry through with the better suspension setup, ideally. It's going to have DRS flip open the rear wing. We're just going to stay on the left here, let them through. We've picked up a 3-second time penalty. If it made a difference, I was ready to appeal since I picked up 1 warning, essentially jumping off the road because Nick was avoiding our teammate. But we've got past. We're going to go ahead and duck into the pit lane here. Very slow pit lane speed, being very careful not to overshoot it. And in we go to grab it. Pepmeister just behind in our rear view mirror in the Red Bull is also coming in. But I think with the way that the race unfolded at the start of this restart, I genuinely think that if I had my setup, I could have contended for the win in this race. Habs fan Nick obviously took over the race lead by overtaking me and kind of held the front for most of this sprint section of the race. So I was pretty much even with them on pace. I genuinely think I could have competed with them for the race win. Granted, it would come with a little bit of luck. Essentially starting on the hard tire meant that with the red flag taking the grid from the last flying lap, gave me the advantage because I had stayed out and not made a pit stop and shuffled to the front of the grid. But that's just kind of the way red flags go. Sometimes you get that free tire change. But now as we head down into the next couple of corners here, we've got about 8 seconds to LC ahead, who has yet to stop. Same with Racer Arrow 4. We're down to 7th, but we've already made our pit stop, and Pepmeister now 3.1 seconds behind as we're getting these medium tires up to temperature. Jumping ahead a couple more laps, 7 of 13. And you can see Pepmeister has closed that gap 3.2 seconds in just a couple of laps. You can see Nick is 9 seconds out ahead as we just kind of leave the door open for Pepmeister on the inside. of Stowe. We're going to defend a little bit, use some of this battery. He's not quite in position. We leave a little space in case he lunges down the outside, but we're going to go ahead and sort of park it on the apexes here and not allow him some momentum. Cryptic is into the pit lane to grab a set of soft compound tires, so he's making his mandatory stop and has come out a good 6 seconds or 5 seconds or so ahead of us on the road. So Petmeister still hounding our gearbox. I don't think we'll be able to hold him back too much longer, considering the straight line speed of this car is abysmal on the standard setup. I was running significantly lower downforce in my custom setup, while still being able to carry speed through the more towards the high speed cornering. So we've got good runs out of some of the lower mid speed corners purely on driving there. Like I was in early in the race, I was on the hard tire. Pep was on the mediums, and after being spun out, I chased them down, overtook them. So I knew that if I had setup loaded, I would have had easily the pace to not just hold off Pep, but I probably would have just run away and been much closer to where Cryptic was, and where Nick was. Cryptic obviously much quicker, but has had that spin, so it lost him quite a bit of time, and you can just see the overspeed that Petmeister had down the inside into Stowe. And just like that, it's going to be very difficult for me to close back up, especially through these these last couple of corners. LC is into the pit lane, so they're making their tire change. They were another driver that was unable to load their race setup, and that was kind of curtains for their race, the championship leader. However, they also got disconnected right at the start. They were able to reconnect, but the AI driving lost them a bit of time. We've got that 3-second time penalty. I'm hoping that Pep picks one up for himself, but you can see already I'm only able to hold with him through one DRS zone, just at about 9/10 after getting overtaken, and you can see a battery starting to run pretty low as well. And we will lose DRS relatively soon. I was kind of hoping that he would make a mistake and we could stay within the 3-second time gap to him, but I mean, you can just see how much quicker he is through some of the more setup dependent areas of the track. I typically just drove Luffield very well, even with the stock setup. I didn't lose a lot. I actually gained a lot of ground on drivers through there, but through Maggots and Beckett's, you can see just how unresponsive the car is through the corners compared to what it was earlier in the race before, and just held on to DRS there. But you can see, even with DRS, I'm not closing at all. I'm literally not closing on him. I've got a giant sail behind me, and in front, just the wing levels of the default setup. So away goes Petmeister. We're going to lose that once again. Vickers is out of the session. On the inside, it looks like he has done it in the pit lane, so he's called it a day. No stopped cars on track, so we're back to green flags now. Lap 10 of this 13-lap, 25% distance race. And we were able actually to run quite a bit under fuel in this race. You can see actually the fuel mix minus 0.12 even at this late stage. Came into the race running minus 1.7, so I knew that I could save quite a lot of fuel in this race. But we're going to jump ahead now to the last couple of corners of the last lap. We're 4th place. Petmeister is about 6 seconds out ahead. Habs fan Nick, with a time penalty, loses the track position to Cryptic F1. 19.6 seconds was the gap, and well, you figure losing about 1.3 seconds a lap on the setup times 13 could have been right there with Nick at the end of this one if I had my setup. But such is how things go. I was still relatively happy to bring home a 4th place after all things considered, not having the car underneath me the way I wanted. I wasn't too unhappy, and of course I'm already out of the chair in the bottom left because with the red flags this race ran a fair bit long, and I was getting ready to make the insanely fast switch over to cover PC Division 4's race. So I was having to get as much setup as I could before that, and then we were going to be off to the races. But top step of the podium, Cryptic F1 renewing his championship challenge. Habs fan Nick in second, and Petmeister picking up a podium as well. 2 new podium sitters this season. Obviously, Nick has had some podiums in the past, but we came home 4. Stanier in 5th. Captain Clapjack is in 6th, and our teammate Queasy came home 7th. So a decent chunk of points for the Mercedes outfit. But we are headed to Miami next weekend. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.